Don't worry, Sarah will clean it up. That was my job title in spirit, if not in HR records. Not senior compliance analyst, not finance risk oversight, just Sarah, the walking lint roller for executive screw-ups. Budget shortfall, I'd adjust the reporting window. Vendor conflict, I'd reconcile the discrepancy. Misstated contracts, guess who got to backdate them to match the CFO's LinkedIn fantasy? I didn't ask questions. I asked for source files. It wasn't glamorous. I didn't have a standing desk or a mentorship program. What I had was a coffee-stained desk near the printer, a migraine every other Thursday, and a reputation for being the woman who got things done. My reward? A 2% raise, a birthday cupcake with someone else's name spelled wrong on the card, and the honor of shielding this company from audit hell year after year. But I was good at it. Not loud, not flashy. Not one of those blazer-clad LinkedIn influencers posting about boss babe mornings and turmeric resilience. I was just the person they turned to when their math didn't math, when their dates didn't line up, when the auditor's questions started leaning too close to the truth. I made their messes go away like a human delete key with a nicotine patch. And let's be honest, that quiet competence is invisible until it's gone. Or worse, until someone above you decides it's redundant. Before we get to that delightful twist, though, real quick, if you've made it this far, and you're listening to this while eating lunch at your desk or rage walking around the office parking lot, do us a solid. Tap that subscribe button and maybe drop a like. 90% of y'all listen without subscribing, and every tap gives our small but mighty team a reason to keep brewing these revenge tales stronger than your office coffee. All right, back to the regularly scheduled betrayal. You see, I wasn't just covering up the cracks. I was the damn caulk, the sealant between non-compliant and barely legal. I once stayed late on a Friday to rework 6 months of expense reports because our director of operations somehow thought client engagement meant renting a Tesla for his nephew's prom. And guess who fixed that little problem with some aggressive reclassification and a prayer? Me, a woman in the top cardigan eating saltines out of a drawer because payroll forgot to approve her lunch reimbursement. Again, I wasn't a whistleblower. I wasn't a martyr. I didn't have some grand plan. I was just tired. Not burnout tired, betrayal tired. Tired like, when you realize they only notice you when they're about to screw you over. Tired like you keep the whole system duct taped together, and instead of saying thank you, they tell you it's just business. But I didn't see it coming. That's the thing. When you're always the fixer, you think that makes you indispensable. You think being quiet and competent protects you. That being the person who never makes waves earns you a life raft when the ship starts sinking. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. It just makes it easier for them to push you overboard without a splash. And so, for years, I kept the company's audit trail prettier than prom night. I redated invoices, smoothed over draft contracts that mysteriously got signed, and triple-checked vendor entries that didn't quite match the work performed. Not because I wanted to deceive anyone, God no. I did it because I believed in keeping the system running. I believed that if I could just hold it together a little longer, maybe the people above me would get their act together. Maybe they'd clean up their own messes eventually. They didn't. Instead, they gave me a farewell cupcake and a memo. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before the phone calls, before the panic, before the audit team descended like accountants of the apocalypse, there was just me. Quiet, diligent, invisible. A woman in a gray cubicle lit by flickering fluorescent lights, holding the seams of a crumbling empire together with sheer willpower and an unhealthy relationship with conditional formatting. They thought silence meant obedience. They were wrong. It was a Wednesday. Always is, isn't it? Betrayals don't wait for Fridays. They need the full work week to fester. I just finished untangling a nightmare of miscategorized invoices from our strategic partner in Phoenix, Reed, the CEO's golf buddy who billed us $40K for consulting and wrote it in Comic Sans. I was closing the spreadsheet when my calendar dinged. Quick sync, director's office. 11 o'clock a.m. Mandatory. I didn't need tarot cards to know that wasn't good. Syncs aren't mandatory unless someone's getting demoted, terminated, or voluntold to cover another executive's mess. Still, I grabbed my notebook because I'm nothing if not professional, and walked in with my spine straight and my cardigan buttoned all the way up. Politeness weaponized. The director didn't even look up when I entered. He just gestured to the chair like he was about to offer me a dental cleaning instead of a career eulogy. His assistant sat in the corner, eyes locked on her laptop like this wasn't her first rodeo. Hell, maybe she was the rodeo clown brought in to distract from the bull. We're restructuring, he said flatly. Eliminating redundancies. Then he added, with the same tone he might use to order oat milk instead of regular, please don't get emotional. That's the phrase, isn't it? The corporate equivalent of calm down or smile more. Verbal chloroform they slap on your mouth to make their cowardice sound clinical. I blinked. That's all I let myself do. No tears, no gasp, no how could you? Even though I'd earned the right to ask. Instead, I nodded slowly. Understood. You'll get a packet, he continued, already typing again like my life wasn't dissolving 6 feet away from his ergonomic keyboard. IT will lock your access by noon. HR has the formal documents. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. Like I'd just finished a tour in Afghanistan, not 10 years in an open concept office with moldy vent filters and passive aggressive Slack threads. I stood up, walked out. My heels echoed down the hallway like gunshots in a church. Coworkers stared but didn't speak. No one ever does. They just glance, then pretend to look at the printer or the break room donuts like they weren't just rubbernecking my professional car crash. I went back to my desk. My access was still active. Funny how fast IT works when it's to shut you out and how slow when it's fixing Janet's broken mouse. I packed methodically. Notebooks, post-its, the mug that said world's okayest employee, a joke gift that hit too close to home. I left the framed thank you card from the last audit on the desk. Let them explain that to the next poor soul they asked to juggle flaming spreadsheets. No one stopped me. No one said goodbye. Outside, I sat in my car for a long time, hands on the steering wheel. The parking lot asphalt shimmered in the summer heat like the world was trying to melt around me. That's when it started. Not tears, not rage, clarity. Like someone wiped the fog off a bathroom mirror and I could finally see what had always been there. Not loyalty, not respect. Just usefulness, and once I was done being useful, they tossed me like expired toner. They didn't just fire me, they freed me. Because for the first time in years, I didn't have to clean up their messes. I could finally show them what their work looked like without me, and they really weren't gonna like it. I sat at my kitchen table, a half-eaten bagel going stale beside a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. My laptop was closed. The house was quiet, eerily so. No Slack pings, no back-to-back calendar meetings. No one asking me to jump on a quick call that always spiraled into fixing their 5-alarm dumpster fire with 3 paper clips and a spreadsheet. Instead, just silence. And the slow, rising hum of memory. Because once your brain stops sprinting for survival, it starts playing reruns. Ugly ones. Just adjust the date, Sarah. It's still technically in the same fiscal quarter. Let's not include that note about the temporary funding. It'll just confuse them. No one needs to see the draft version. Just attach the clean one. Years of hearing that crap, and me like a fool nodding along, telling myself it was harmless, that I was keeping things running, that I was protecting the company from itself. And maybe once that had been true. Maybe I believed I was doing the right thing, but looking back now, I wasn't protecting the company. I was shielding the people running it from consequences, from truth, from their own laziness, shortcuts, and willful incompetence. It all started pooling in my mind, one memory at a time. The vendor payment I reclassified when the PO mysteriously vanished. The budget override I smoothed out when marketing decided to blow $12K on branded Bluetooth speakers. The payroll report I massaged when legal said, "We're not obligated to disclose the overtime. If we don't count it as overtime." A minefield. That's what the audit trail looked like without me sweeping it clean. A damn minefield, and now I didn't work there anymore. I didn't have to clean it. Hell, I didn't even have to care, but I did care, just not about saving them. I cared about the truth, not because I was noble, not because I wanted justice, but because I'd swallowed too many lies, cleaned too much dirt, and been thanked with a packet and a pat on the head. They wanted just business? Fine. I'd show them business. Raw, unedited, the version they never let anyone see. I opened my laptop, typed in my old credentials to the backup drive, forgotten in the rush to revoke my main access, no doubt. Still worked, sloppy. Inside was everything. Every version, every track change, every timestamp save of the documents I'd rewritten into corporate gospel. The real reports. The ones I'd saved before the adjustments. Ones I was supposed to delete once the official version was finalized. Only I never deleted them. Not because I was planning this, but because somewhere, deep down, I always knew someone would need the truth. Even if it was just me. It wasn't some heroic epiphany. It wasn't rage. It was a low, humming click in my chest, like a key turning in a long-forgotten lock. I didn't need to exaggerate a single thing. I just had to let the facts speak, loud and unfiltered. And I knew exactly who would be interested in hearing them. The external audit firm. The one that came every third quarter. The one I had politely served coffee to while sitting in on hours of interviews. The one that asked questions and always seemed to almost catch the gaps before I spackled them shut. They'd never seen the raw files. No one had. But they were going to. And I would make sure every single line item they'd smoothed over was now highlighted, annotated, and impossible to ignore. Not revenge, not sabotage, just records management. That's what I was trained to do, wasn't it? Manage the records. Well, it was time someone saw the real ones. I didn't slam keys. I didn't mutter revenge speeches or cue up some dramatic playlist about empowerment or retribution. No fight song, no before he cheats, just silence. And the quiet hum of my overworked laptop as it woke from sleep, blinking like a tired old dog still ready to fetch. I clicked open the folder I'd labeled 3 years ago, Archive Working Versions. Not the cleaned ones, not the final use this ones that made it into the audit packages. These were the ugly ducklings, the raw, unfiltered files that still had red lines, comments like "Is this legal?" and timestamps that told a far nastier story than our C-suite ever did. Some of them hadn't been touched since the day they were born. Others had gone through 6 revisions, rewritten into fiction, but all of them told the truth. I started collecting, not haphazardly, surgically. Each document was opened, reviewed, annotated. I added a small note when needed. This version predates approval revision or original line item before marketing reimbursement edit. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to point a sober adult in the right direction. Expense reports that somehow lost 2 pages between draft and final? Included. Contracts with deleted indemnity clauses? Included. Budget summaries that originally flagged massive overages, later resolved with mystery reallocations? You bet your ass they were included. And then there were the emails. The ones where I'd asked, should we disclose this variance? And got replies like, just soften the language or take that part out, too much detail. Those weren't opinions. They were directives, and I'd kept them all. Not out of spite, but because I'm the kind of person who makes a folder called CYA and backs it up twice. I created a clean ZIP file, named it FY Audit Prelim Backup Unaltered because if you want someone to take something seriously, you give it a name that sounds boring and legitimate. Then I opened Outlook. 2. External Auditor at Company. ComCC, no one. Subject, FY Compliance Documents Historical Versions, Unfiltered Body. Hello, as part of routine records management following recent personnel restructuring, please find attached historical versions of documentation referenced in previous audit cycles. These files include unedited working drafts with original timestamps and approval metadata intact. Let me know if you need further clarification. Best regards, Sarah, former SR. Compliance Analyst Click. Sent, no drama, no tracking pixel, no read receipt. I didn't care if they opened it today or next week or during their next deep dive. What mattered was that it was there, on record, archived, logged, impossible to ignore once seen. I sat back and closed the laptop. It wasn't satisfying, not like movies make it seem. There wasn't a big swell of music or some cathartic scream into the sky. It was quiet, hollow even, because this wasn't vengeance. It was surgery. I hadn't stabbed anyone. I just removed the bandages they'd wrapped around their own gangrenous mistakes. And now the wound was open, exposed, bleeding truth, and it wasn't my job to stitch it shut anymore. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. Not because I was eager to greet the day, hell no, because my brain had decided to run a 4 a.m. anxiety marathon complete with popcorn flashbacks and worst-case scenarios on loop. What if they knew it came from me? What if they spun it as malicious? What if some silk-tongued VP waltzed into a conference room, wagged a finger, and painted me as the bitter ex-employee lashing out because her severance package didn't come with a gold-plated stapler? I sat up in bed, heart pounding like I'd robbed a bank. But I hadn't robbed anything. I hadn't forged a thing. I hadn't even editorialized. I didn't sneak into their systems post-firing. I used a backup copy they themselves forgot to revoke. Everything I'd sent was legally generated, internally stored, and audit-relevant. Still, fear has a way of worming through even the thickest walls of logic. I padded to the kitchen and poured myself coffee strong enough to make my ancestors flinch. I stood by the sink and stared out the window at the neighbor's flamingo lawn ornament, wondering what it would feel like to go back to pretending life was just morning routines and annoying leaf blowers. But I couldn't unknow what I knew. I couldn't unsend the files, and I didn't want to. That realization landed with surprising clarity, because the deeper truth was, I wasn't scared of what I'd done. I was scared of being right. I was scared that the auditors would open those files and see exactly what I'd seen, what I'd spent years glossing over. I was scared they'd realize just how much smoke we'd been pumping into the mirrors. Because if they did, things would unravel, not for me, for them. And the guilt crept in, fast and familiar. That old reflex to protect, to fix, to minimize damage. I'd spent so long covering for them that part of me still flinched at the idea of letting the chips fall, even if they deserved it. But then I heard his voice again in my head, like a phantom fart in a conference room. Please don't get emotional, and I smiled, not a nice smile. A knife-in-the-teeth smile, because that was the game, wasn't it? Guilt for doing your job, praise when it saved them. Silence when it didn't. They didn't want accountability. They wanted a warm body who could type fast and never ask, isn't this fraud? But I hadn't committed fraud. I had saved evidence. Not a single cell was doctored. Not a single file was altered. I didn't add emotion. I just sent the truth. And if the truth burned the place down, well, maybe it needed to burn, so no, I wouldn't call a lawyer. I wouldn't tiptoe back and try to unsend. I wouldn't spiral into shame because they mistook silence for loyalty and legality for aggression. I'd done the one thing they taught me never to do. I stopped protecting them, and it felt terrifying and freeing. Exactly right. The first few days were dead air. Silence so loud it rang in my ears. No email bounce backs. No follow-ups from the auditors. No panic calls. Just nothing. The kind of nothing that makes you start second-guessing everything. I kept refreshing my inbox like an addict waiting for dealer. Every ding from a promotional email made my pulse jump, but nothing came from the firm, not even an out-of-office reply. It was like I'd launched a flare into the void and the universe shrugged. By day 5, I started wondering if I'd imagined it all. Maybe the files were already buried. Maybe they didn't care. Maybe the audit firm was in bed with leadership after all, and all I'd done was give them extra firewood for their next round of corporate gaslighting. Maybe they laughed. Oh look, Sarah finally grew a spine. Cute. Then day 7 hit. It started with a text from Marcus in IT. Hey, did you hear they pushed the audit up? Auditors are on site today. My coffee slipped from my hand and splashed across the countertop. That wasn't normal. Audits were scheduled months in advance. The whole company usually performed a synchronized panic dance for weeks leading up to it, scrambling to look clean, prepping narratives, airbrushing reports. But now, early, unannounced, that wasn't an audit, that was a raid. An hour later, I got another message, this one from Julia in procurement. All department meetings canceled. Finance wing locked down. They pulled the shared drives offline. Then, Director Simmons is everywhere, won't stop pacing. I leaned back in my chair, hands clasped over my mouth, and let out a laugh so bitter it tasted like pennies. Not joy, not triumph, something darker. Like watching a dam crack exactly where you told them it would, year after year. Now they were trying to patch it with chewing gum. Then came the cherry on top. A DM from a junior analyst I'd mentored, bless her stressed out soul. They pulled all the original vendor contracts. Something about discrepancies in metadata. Simmons looks like he hasn't slept in days. Is this you? I didn't reply, not because I was scared, because I was tired. Tired of carrying their sins in my inbox like a human confession booth. Tired of playing the dutiful ghost, keeping the skeletons tucked neatly in the closet. Tired of pretending I didn't see the rot in the foundation every time I tried to balance a spreadsheet that refused to add up. Simmons, Director Simmons, the man who couldn't be bothered to look up from his laptop, when he fired me was now starring in every emergency meeting like he was auditioning for a role called Sweaty Guy with No Alibi. I imagined him on those calls, trying to answer for reports he never read, contracts he never understood, files I used to whisper explanations for off camera while he took credit on the record, and now I wasn't there. Now all he had were raw files and sharp questions, and a team of auditors with no reason to keep pretending his math made sense. I pictured him opening the ZIP folder, clicking through the drafts, reading the file names, each one a breadcrumb trail to his own laziness. And I wondered if he finally understood what I'd done. I hadn't sabotaged him, I just stopped saving him. And for once, the truth didn't come dressed in bullet points and soft language. It came wearing timestamps, approval logs, and metadata that doesn't lie. Business, as usual, was officially canceled. The call came at 10:13 p.m., not a text, not an email, a full-blown, old-school phone call like a man reaching out from the wreckage, hoping to claw back some control. I let it ring twice, 3 times. Let the weight of his name on the screen settle into my chest like a stone dropped in a pond. Simmons. Then I answered. Hello? Silence, but not the good kind. I could hear his breath, ragged, controlled, like he was trying very hard to sound like a man who hadn't just spent his day explaining how our operating budget showed $28,000 in miscellaneous team building that somehow translated to bottle service receipts and golf cart rentals. Sarah, he said finally, with that overly pleasant tone people use when they've been coached by legal. I wanted to touch base about something that crossed my desk. I didn't reply. Let the pause stretch like taffy. I understand you've been in touch with our external partners, he continued, voice cracking ever so slightly at partners, like the word tasted different now that it came with subpoenas and side eyes. I said, not even a full syllable, just a noise. Verbal shrug, he pressed on. There's some confusion, I think. You may have sent some outdated files, or perhaps internal drafts not meant for external review. I could practically hear the script. Not an accusation yet, just gentle gaslighting. The kind you drip like syrup on pancakes. Try to make the truth soft enough to swallow. I just want to clarify, he added. What exactly did you send? I didn't hesitate. The business records, I said, that's all. Another pause, I could hear a click in the background. Maybe a pen, maybe a jaw tightening. He cleared his throat, tried again. Right, but which versions? I mean from which fiscal cycle? Because you know how many draft iterations we go through before finalizing? I cut him off, calm as a morgue fridge. The ones with original timestamps. The ones tied to the first internal approvals. The ones that align with vendor correspondence and bank transfers. Silence again. And his breathing changed. There it was, not anger, not yet, just the panic slithering in beneath the corporate veneer. The dawning realization that the scaffolding was gone, that the cover stories had cracks, that someone finally had receipts. You could have come to me, he said, quieter now. If you had concerns, we could have discussed this. There was no need to escalate things like this. There it was, the pivot, this, as if I'd thrown a tantrum. As if I'd set fire to the place, not simply pulled back the curtains and opened the blinds. I didn't escalate anything, I said. I followed protocol, records retention and disclosure. You'll find it in Section 9B of the Compliance Exit Checklist, the one you signed when you let me go. A long exhale, no reply, and then it happened just for a second. The mask dropped. You don't know what you've done, he said, low and bitter. You've put the whole operation at risk. And that's when I smiled, not for him. For me, because there it was. He didn't say I lied. He didn't say I was wrong. He said I'd put them at risk because the truth was a threat. And without me standing between them in it, they were exposed. I'm not with the company anymore, I said. Whatever happens now, that's your business. And then, because I wanted him to feel just a sliver of what I felt in that boardroom, discarded, diminished, dismissed, I added, please don't get emotional. Click, call ended. By Monday morning, the vultures had landed. It started with a LinkedIn post from one of our execs. No name, no role, just an inspirational black and white stock photo of a mountain and the caption, resilience is forged in the fire. We bend, but we never break. Hash leadership, hash tough times, hash integrity matters. I laughed so hard, I nearly dropped my phone in the sink. Integrity. That man once asked if we could write off his personal ski trip as a team-building summit because he brought an intern along. Now he was waxing poetic about adversity like he hadn't spent the last 6 years duct-taping financial reports together with wishful thinking and espresso shots. But the comments were where the real blood was. Not from customers. Not yet. From employees, former ones. From the quiet crew. The invisible workforce, people like me, wishing the team strength in this time of reflection. Hard lessons make strong leaders. Some of us learned that lesson early. Glad I trusted my instincts when I left. No one said it outright. They didn't have to. The subtext was so thick you could spread it on toast. Because the news was out. The audit failed. Not a slap on the wrist, oops, we missed a policy failure. A full-blown, red-flagged, how the hell did this go unnoticed for so long? Failure, years of corner cutting, contractual inconsistencies, budget misreporting, documentation gaps that looked less like oversight and more like strategy. Vendors began pulling out of negotiations. Investors started requesting emergency calls. And Simmons, that man went dark, deleted his profile picture, switched his settings to private. Someone on Reddit said he was spotted leaving the office Friday afternoon, looking like he'd been hit by a bus full of angry accountants. Rumor had it the audit firm had flagged at least 14 separate financial statements for non-standard reconciliation practices. Translation: someone cooked the books and the kitchen was out of fire extinguishers. Even better, 2 members of the board issued statements within 24 hours of each other, each subtly blaming the other for insufficient internal oversight. A slow, quiet implosion. No sirens, no public press release, just pressure building behind every door until things started cracking. I didn't celebrate, not really. Instead, I sat on my couch in sweatpants, scrolling LinkedIn with a glass of wine and a frozen pizza, watching their world unravel in real time. Watching the same people who once told me, we just need to tidy this up a bit, now fumbling to explain why the numbers didn't match, why approvals were missing, why timestamps didn't align. I'd spent years hiding those flaws with color-coded spreadsheets and late-night revision sessions. Now they were laid bare, not because I exposed them, because I stopped hiding them. And it was amazing how fast the truth spread once you stopped holding it back. Somewhere, in a very beige office with flickering lights and a printer that always jammed, a compliance team was probably re-auditing every policy I'd ever touched. I imagined them reading my notes, seeing the original files, wondering how many fires I had quietly put out, how many train wrecks I'd postponed just long enough for someone else to take credit. And now there was no more credit, just blame. Blame in tailored suits and keyword-optimized job titles, blinking into the void and trying to find a new narrative that didn't begin with we ignored the only person who knew what the hell she was doing. But me, I wasn't in the story anymore. I was just the footnote they never saw coming. The call came during dinner. I was microwaving leftover lasagna, wearing socks with holes in the heels, watching some nature documentary where a snow leopard mauled a goat in slow motion. It felt fitting, poetic even. The number wasn't saved, but I knew it like a scar. I let it ring until the last second, then answered with the kind of stillness you only earn after a full week of watching grown men in power suits scramble like toddlers in a ball pit full of subpoenas. Hello? No preamble this time. Just his voice, raw, frantic, and coming apart at the seams. What did you send them? Not a hello, not a breath, just a scream. Like someone ripped open a wound and poured lemon juice and accountability into it. I didn't flinch, didn't pace, didn't even hit mute on the snow leopard, who, as it happened, had just dragged the goat off a cliff. I brought the phone slowly to my ear and let the silence stretch so tight it could have sliced a man in half. Then I spoke. Calm, measured, with the same robotic, dismissive cadence he used when he told me, please don't get emotional. The business records, I said, no emotion. He went quiet, not peaceful quiet, stunned quiet, kind that only happens when a man realizes he is not in control anymore. When the curtain's been pulled back and he's standing naked in a room full of auditors holding highlighters and bad intentions. You don't understand what you've done, he hissed finally, voice shaking like a wet dog in a wind tunnel. You've jeopardized our investors, our contracts. Do you have any idea the exposure this causes? I didn't reply, because it wasn't a question. It was a confession. He wasn't worried about fairness or facts. He was worried about exposure, his exposure. He thought I'd swing wildly, thought I'd rage post or leak gossip or torch bridges with fire and fury, but I hadn't screamed. I hadn't posted a damn thing. I hadn't even raised my voice. All I did was stop editing the truth, and it gutted him more than any tantrum ever could, so I said nothing. Just let the silence answer him. Same silence he gave me when he signed my termination without reading the files I left behind. The same silence they all gave me when I asked hard questions and got empty smiles in return. That silence, it's a sword now. He started to speak again, something about litigation, about how this could be interpreted as retaliatory. But the edge was gone. His voice cracked on the word interpret, like even he knew it wouldn't hold up, so I ended it. Not with a threat, just with a click, I hung up. And in that final moment, it hit me. The very thing they dismissed, my quiet, my steadiness, my refusal to play loud politics, was what undid them. My weakness became the scalpel that sliced straight through their veneer of legitimacy. No screaming, no drama, just records, facts, and a woman they thought was safe to underestimate. Business, nothing more. Appreciate you sticking around, you legends of the break room. Subscribe for more chaos. Let's make your old managers spill their coffee in fear.